really sport has taught me a lot of that. And I think you can't, deny or even think that it doesn't translate into your work life. Of course it does. It translates into your personal life. And I think the one thing also about endurance sport, because it's hard, is that you've got to find right side to everything, right? So you've got to find that thing that'll make you smile, that'll make you kind of think, okay, this is actually brilliant.
Welcome everybody to the Workable show. As you know, my name is Maynard and we are a community that is completely obsessed with building a meaningful career and doing work that matters. We are lifelong learners, and today we are super privileged to have on the call Amy Hopkins. Amy was previously managing editor of Women's Magazine South Africa, as well as the ex-food editor of Women's Health Magazine. Just some background info. She is, of course, very passionate about all things food, have been a published recipe developer for over 5 years with your own cookbook called Love Food, published in English and Afrikaans in December of 2020. Congratulations, by the way. Amy has worked in the media and publishing industry since 2007 with extensive experience in digital marketing, brand building, events, content, community building, things like that across all platforms, which actually resulted in her launching her own business not less than a year ago called Amy Hopkins Media, which is super exciting. Amy has had the opportunity to work with amazing brands like Total Sports, Media24, Condé Nast, just to mention a couple, and is also an avid endurance athlete, training and competing regularly in cycling, running, and most recently triathlons. And I'd love to hear about that a little bit. I have been following some of Amy's adventures over the last couple of years and also had the opportunity to meet up for a bike ride or two. And what was immediately apparent to me, Amy, was the seeming ease, the effortless ease with which you navigate change and things that for the rest of us would completely upset the apple cart. So my immediate question, if we can jump right in, welcome to the show, by the way. We're so glad to have you. But if I can jump right into some of the more juicy bits, tell me, what is the one thing that keeps you going, whether as an endurance athlete or as a professional or in starting your own business or your creative endeavors, when you're overwhelmed, when you feel things are hard? What is that one thing that helps you to keep going and just push through to the next level?
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's really a privilege to also be here on the show and also lovely to connect with you again. It's a little bit of a complicated question because I don't think there is one thing. You did touch on the fact that change is something that I seem to manage fairly easily. I think my whole life has revolved around a lot of change. So I moved a lot when I was a kid. My biological father died when I was quite young, and my mom also remarried, and this led us to kind of change a few schools and move around the country. And I think already having that base as a young person, you kind of become adaptable, right? Because you have to be. So, you always have to learn how to make new friends, go out there and kind of introduce yourself and get used to this idea that nothing is constant. And I think understanding and almost expecting that, I mean, there's no better, lesson than lockdown to have taught us, a lot of us, that anything can change.
Yes.
And I think so there's certainly some ways that you can prepare. So a part of my kind of working career and just personal life has always been looking at growth. How can I grow personally? How can I grow within my career space? So I think constantly learning is really a big part of what I do and what I've spent energy and time on. But, also just being able to find the small joy out of things. So I think every one of us gets stressed. Every one of us gets overwhelmed. I've got little techniques that I use to actually help with things like, let's say, time management. I need to write my list and I like to physically write them down. I know that, things are better when you can, possibly record that digitally, but I like the act of taking a pen and actually writing stuff down. I feel like it clears my mind. I also find just breathing. It sounds like the simplest thing, but honestly, just taking a step back, focusing on your breath, and especially the exhale. I think a lot of people think that it's about the deep inhale, but it's actually about the slow exhale that really calms your body down. And so just take 2 minutes and do that, and you'll feel already a lot less stressed, and you can be able to kind of continue what you're doing. And I sort of learned a lot more of that those sort of techniques when I did my yoga teacher training course. I'm also a qualified yoga teacher. It's more of the personal growth journey than necessarily the career growth journey. But I really fell in love with yoga as a practice and decided I wanted to learn more about the world of yoga and how it's a really great healing exercise as well. For someone like me that's had struggles before in the past with anxiety, it was extremely important to be able to really tap into like a sense of peace and calm. So my yoga practice was quite important for that. And so I would say write lists, take a breath, everything's going to be okay. That's how you kind of keep going.
All right. So I completely agree with that. But you mentioned something that's fascinating to you. You distinguish between your personal growth journey and your professional growth journey. But I mean, we both know that those two are connected, right? So tell me a little bit just about your own career journey. You have one of the more interesting and inspiring careers. But tell me, just give us like a broad overview. How has your career developed so that the people that are watching can just get to know you a little bit? What are some of the history? Start wherever you want, finish wherever you want, share whatever you want. So but just tell us a little bit about your career.
So I'm going to start at the very beginning, which is that I've pretty much always worked my whole life. This includes while I was studying at university. This includes while I was in my final years at school. I had a tuck shop in the boarding house. I waitressed. I got to the University of Cape Town and didn't know anyone. I'd moved at that point from Limpopo, a small town called Zanin area. And the way I kind of got to make friends, but also earn money was to, work in various like wine bars and restaurants and that kind of thing. So I always really worked. And I studied, so I went to UCT to study psychology, ended up doing media and writing as a second major, which is what my career path went into. And as much as I love psychology and it is a fascinating subject, I very much, I think, am geared towards the media world. So in my final year, I had applied to do some part-time work for a newspaper that doesn't exist anymore. But for those of you, this is showing my age now, it used to be called the Cape Ads and was basically an advertising newspaper. And I would do anything from deep etching images of, secondhand cars in Coral Draw to kind of proof reading and rewriting these adverts that were sent in. So kind of anything that I could do to help. And I thought that was quite a nice base as a young person wanting to get into media. Writing and content is really my strong point, but I think you can never not like open your scope of work and learn a little bit of design, know how to use design programs, because these are people that you're going to be working with. And I think it's important that you understand the different platforms and programs that are used within your industry. So I really quickly kind of got into media, started working in magazines. I've worked for a number of different magazines at Condé Nast, at Media 24. I was the managing editor at Women's Health. As you know, and you've said, done a lot of food development, recipe development. I did the cookbook, which is a lockdown love project. So that kind of was, one of the big things that I took on during that time. And what I think was quite tough is when I got into the media industry, let's say, it was kind of the heydays, when magazines used to be this thick and we would they were tombs, they were coffee table books in a way. And very shortly into my working career, the kind of 2008, 2007, that time crash hit. And so we already as young working people felt the sense of sudden loss of advertising. What does this mean? Industries under threat, that kind of thing. And so you really have to be quite adaptable and again, sort of brace yourself and be willing to almost do all kinds of different work. So the first real job was like an editorial assistant, which means you basically do anything that your editor tells you to do, whether that's like stalking someone on Twitter or, finding pictures or writing a blurb, whatever it is, anything, getting coffee. And I think it's a really good base because what often happens is when you're young and you're getting into an industry, you don't always have a clear direction of what your kind of real strength or skill set lies. And I think having a good base of almost like a generalist skill set really helps. And so when lockdown hit, there was a massive upset. Of course, we all went through a lot of change. A lot of industries suffered, and particularly publishing industry suffered. I mean, we all know in South Africa, lots of magazine publications closed. And so I decided to, I'm sorry, that's my cat. I decided to.
Welcome.
Oh, there's the other one. So now you know I'm just
Welcome.
surrounded by cats.
They are so welcome to the show.
They're the best. Also great de-stressing. Just have a little fur baby nearby.
Of course.
So I started working for myself, and it was really this big leap of faith. I kind of relied on the network that I've built up over the years, and I think it's so important to make those connections. And you never know who you work with along the lines in your life, where you'll meet them again, how you'll come across them again, and in what way you might be of service to them or they might be of service to you, for example. And so I'd really relied on the network that I built through years of working at Women's Health and at Media 24. We got into events and all kinds of other big things. So while I was at Women's Health, I decided to do extra courses. I wanted to increase my skill set in digital marketing. So I did digital marketing courses. I did events management courses because as a publication, we started bringing in alternative revenue through eventing. So I think it was quite a smart way for Media 24 to approach the kind of, let's not say decline necessarily in print, but there certainly was a shift. And so we had to start thinking about different ways to bring in revenue. And so it was, again, this thing of learning how to manage events. And then I would take that on and do these fitness parties and cool things. It was great. And so when I started working for myself, it really was a leap of faith. I had a few small projects to work on. I did the cookbook, which was a great kind of, I would say, segue into the rest of the space. I've been fortunate enough to work with really incredible brands. I did some work for Liquor Say, which as a foodie is amazing. With, as you mentioned, Total Sports. I'm such a passionate sports person, so really loved working with them. And more recently in a lot of like travel. So Newmark Hotels Group, they're an incredible property management group. And I've been involved in redoing their whole website and a lot of kind of marketing content. So what had happened was I had this almost more traditional editorial and really journalist background. And over the last couple of years, I've been shifting that into a marketing digital marketing and content strategy marketing with a bit of brand management shift. So kind of moving more into that space. And I think doing the courses, being involved in practically any event or like anything that I could be involved in was just incredible learning. And I'm actually very excitingly, I'm taking on a brand new contract to be a brand director with an incredible agency now in Cape Town called Machine. And so it's just amazing. If I look at the last 2 years, what has happened, and it's just, you never stop learning. You build those relationships, you keep your network wide. And I think that's kind of a summary, if you like, a bit of a long-winded summary of my kind of working career and headspace.
All right. Well, that's amazing. It's super inspiring. And I love how you have such a great take on how the one thing has naturally kind of morphed into the next, if you're open to it, if you keep those connections intact, if you keep learning. But okay, I'm not sure if anybody has ever asked you this or if you've ever heard about it, but I'm interested to know. If you had to zoom out and just look at what are some of the like 2 or 3 or even just one big overarching lessons that you've learned through all these transitions. I mean, what would you say are some of the deeper truths that you've instilled as you look back on your career? And I mean, you've still got so much ahead of you, but for now.
We hope, yes.
Yes.
So I think one of the big lessons I've learned is that you should never be too proud to kind of take on any kind of job. So through this time where I was working on myself, and I worked on a lot of different contracts, various types of work. Part of what I do is recipe development for some clients, but I'll actually be taking photos, recording the videos, doing video editing myself, building the recipe, all of that stuff. And that might seem a little laborious, but I'm happy to do it because for me, then I'm also upping my video editing skills, for example, as something else that I'm doing.
Yes.
So it's all about being willing and open to take on challenges, even if they seem like, something that, might be this kind of labor intensive task or just something that you're slightly out of your depth with, but learn how to do it. And it's incredible because nowadays, not like when I was a kid, but nowadays we have the internet, which can help us learn everything. And I think it's so great and empowering to be able to learn how to do something and then use that and then kind of build that skill set over time. So Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, definitely. I mean, I deeply identify with this fact that we have this open economy of information at the moment. There's all the gatekeepers have been removed. Everything is available to us. But okay, but my follow-up question inevitably is going to be, what are you then learning right now? It is, I mean, it's so inspiring to hear that, that one of your learnings is that nothing is ever beneath you. Nothing, you're not ever to have that humility to always be a beginner again. I really like that. But then, what are you learning at this moment, or this week, or in this recent couple of months? What is the one thing that you're learning right now that you're a beginner at now?
Yes. So something that I've been quite enjoying is really looking at how to build a brand story from scratch. So this is something that it fascinates me because I'm a storyteller by kind of natural, and because of journalist background, but to really be able to look at a brand or a business or a person even and go, how do you kind of build their brand story, and you kind of break that up into all the different facets that are needed there, as well as the kind of the sort of personality they are, to then developing the kinds of like fonts and colors and tones and anything that's almost more, I would say, design aesthetic, which is not a strong point for me, but it fascinates me and I find it beautiful, interesting work. So I've been lucky enough to be working alongside some real experts in the space, and so I feel like you never know who your next mentor is, right? Sometimes it could just be someone that you collaborate with. Sometimes it can be someone that you've connected with over a coffee or a particular project, but you're always able to learn something interesting from them.
So, okay, so tell me, I love that what you're saying, but tell me, what is not necessarily your preferred way of learning, but your most intuitive way of learning? Is it like formal learning? Did you feel that you learned the most when you studied at varsity, or is it when you like subscribe to a course, or is it when you spend time with mentors and you learn from other people, or doing desktop research? What is the way that when you feel you have to approach a new skill or something, what's your go-to?
Yes. So I think for me particularly, it it's like two kinds of things. So one, I am really happy to do research, and I am a visual person, but I also read quite quickly and I read a lot. So I would say I'm quite a
Yes.
voracious reader, and so I do absorb a lot of information. But how I really learn it is being able to retell it. So it's almost like really being able to understand the story and then tell that story to someone else. Then you know that you've really understood the topic and that you've really kind of learned it. So being able to then practically test the skills. So if I'm learning, for example, how to use a platform, then I need to give myself a project and actually plan how to plan out using that. So recently, so while my background, for example, in using design platforms, even though I'm not a designer, was in design. But more recently, I've had to learn how to really become more comfortable with Figma, which is a little bit different in terms of thinking. And so I've been doing a whole lot of different projects using Figma. And I think, that's really how you then know where your stumbling blocks are, right? Because when you're actually practically practicing, you go, oh no, I don't know how to do this. And why can't I do this? And then you've got to go research again and then come back and then do it. So I think really, don't wait too long when you learn something to put it into practice. I think practicing it
Yeah.
and physically using it, or like retelling it if it's information, quite soon afterwards, just helps to really store that into your memory, and I think helps you better the skill.
That makes 100% sense. I was super inspired as an author by this quote the other day. I'm sure you've heard it before, that if you really want to learn about something, write a book about it. So that inspired me as an
I love
author,
that.
but it was a little bit disillusioning as a reader, because it made me then second guess all my favorite authors. I'm like, oh my goodness, did you just write this book that I pretty much based my life on just so that you could learn about it? But it's true. I mean, it's true either way, right? Okay, so I have another question for you. I'm just moving away from yourself a little bit. When you look at the world, everything out there, you've of course got a unique perspective on the world and the people that you work with. The workforce has changed. I mean, the whole world is on its head. What do you think, in your opinion, in the workplace, whether you work at a company, you're employed, or you're an entrepreneur, or what do you think is the most important skill that we all should be working on right now? That we, that almost non-negotiable, that we all should learn at this point. What is your opinion on that?
So I think one of the most powerful tools we have are these. And
Yes.
we recorders of interesting information, whether it's by video or sound or capturing photographs or whatever it is. And I think being able to really use those skills, because no matter your industry, everything is like shareable or marketable. And so I think being able to understand how to market yourself as a person, being able to understand how to talk about or market your business, is all of that is a skill that no matter what industry you're in, you'll be able to use. So even if you're working for a company, you want to know how to market yourself because you want to get ahead and build your career. If you're an entrepreneur with your own business, you want to know how to market your business and be able to speak about your business quite like succinctly and clearly. And, it's that elevator pitch thing, right? Like you've got to be able to kind of practice that kind of thing. And I think having a cell phone, we're able to really just share this kind of content. We're able to be our own marketers. So I think it's really about brushing up on those platforms, use LinkedIn. It's the most powerful tool. I absolutely love it as a social media platform. And all of this just requires a bit of open-mindedness and time, really. It's about playing around, putting some things out there. Yes, you've got to build a little bit of confidence, but it's fun. Like use your friends and family as sounding boards if you need to, I think, so I think being able to learn a little bit of marketing for yourself, your brand, your business, whatever it is such a powerful tool. You can really, with your phone, share so much content about your business, who you are, anything. And I think it's something that all of us should be able to do.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I'm learning now. Only recently, a friend of mine challenged me with a question. He's like, what do you want to be known for in the world out there? You've got this megaphone in your pocket. You want to be known for sunset selfies and great ice cream photos. Like, what do you want to be known for? And that evening, like I couldn't sleep. I'm like, I went through all my social media feeds. I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I making myself known for out in the world? If I had to expire the next day, this would be my legacy. And then that next day I sat down and I started generating ideas for more meaningful content, things that I wanted to put out in the world. So deeply identify with what you're saying. I want to ask you a couple of advice questions, like what's your advice for this and this and this, and we'll get to that in a moment. But before that, I just want to ask you something which is more like a personal interest question for myself, and maybe somewhere out there somebody else is interested in that as well. But what has, like, your endurance sport and your dedication to sport and fitness, what role has that, if any, played in your professional endurance and in your life as a professional?
So I think one of the most outstanding things for me that I've learned through that is that endurance sport teaches you that you can get through hard things, right? Like I've done a 10-hour bicycle ride that I wanted to give up.
Yes.
I faced every kind of weather, rain, mud, everything was dreadful, but I finished it, and you kind of feel this real sense of accomplishment, and you start to teach yourself and to realize that you have this ability to get through things that are difficult and kind of power through them and also learn through them, maybe adjust your strategy, maybe you've got to rethink something. But really, sport has taught me a lot of that, and I think you can't deny or even think that it doesn't translate into your work life. Of course it does. It translates into your personal life. And I think the one thing also about endurance sport, because it's hard, is that you've got to find a bright side to everything, right? So you've got to find that thing that'll make you smile, that'll make you kind of think, okay, this is actually great, or just really feel present. And I think one of the things that's a very strong message that's come across for me is that I have this overwhelming sense of privilege because I'm healthy, I'm strong, I can do something, I can get through this. And when things are hard as well, I remind myself of this fact, and I go, I'm actually privileged to be here. I'm privileged to do this job. I'm privileged to meet these people, to be in this situation. And I think, that also is across through all different aspects of my life. The other thing is, between work and endurance sports, I don't have much of a social life. So if you see me, it's coffee on the bike. Or it's like an in-between work coffee or something. But it means that my life has changed over the years.
Yes.
I'm an early morning person now, and what's important for me is being able to own my mornings and feel like I've got the sense of personal time, which a lot of that involves my sport, before I then kind of start my work day, where I'm really then giving time to others. And I think having the combination is a really good balance.
Yeah, I also like for myself. There's this saying that you of course know in endurance sport, whether you're running or cycling. I know when I'm out with a group riding my bike, people would say, "Yeah, I kind of lost my sense of humor after 100 Ks," and that's when I started to, which speaks to our ability to not only just do hard things well, but also do them well with others. When you're in that pressure type situation, to still be able to be outwardly focused and do that well with other people. And in a professional setting, the other day, I used that expression after a difficult meeting, and I had to explain it to my colleagues. And I just realized how doing endurance sport or doing hard things while either outside in nature prepares you to do it with other people, to still be focused on the other, in have yourself in a giving outside kind of generous posture, even when you yourself are pulling at the short end as well.
And you actually raised such an, I wanted to just say, Maynard, you raised such an interesting point about teamwork, because now that you sort of brought that up, I'm thinking about how I've done events with my partner, mountain biking races where you have to work together as a team of man or woman or mixed, a cycling team, and you've got to really cover this long distance, 200 kilometers. And what those events have also taught me, which is completely translated into my work and personal life, is that you can't always put yourself ahead. If you're out there on your own, your team isn't going to make it. And I think in a work environment, you've got to realize that the sort of, the person that's kind of the most overwhelmed or is struggling, you've got to really pick them up, because they are like the baseline of the team, and you've got to really work together. And I think thinking of ways to pull together, to kind of look at a situation differently, to jump in where you can, all of that stuff has been extremely helpful, and something that I think about more in my work space and environments too.
Yes. No, that makes 100% sense. Okay, I wanted to ask you about your advice. So, there's been this incredible themes throughout our conversation about going through change, change being forced upon you, but then um, using those change to lean into the opportunity that's always there by learning, by staying connected, by staying positive, and using change and sometimes disruption almost as like a springboard into the next phase of opportunity. So here's my question to you. What's your advice to people that are going through transitions right now, that don't necessarily see that opportunity, that look around and it feels like it's the end of the world? Everything is being pulled from underneath them, whether in career or personal life. What would be your advice to people like that?
So I actually read a very interesting study the other day, which it's about sort of happiness and optimism and pessimism, and it showed that it's not so much about whether you're constantly optimistic about something. It's really about not thinking about worst case scenario, and that was sort of really led to more sort of happiness in general. And I think it's such an important thing, because it's hard to be really optimistic all the time. It's hard to really think positively all the time. But I think if you can almost just not go to worst case scenario, you'll stand in like a little bit of a better state. And I think what I've often done in times where I'm feeling quite overwhelmed and stressed is I do sort of write everything out. Like I've said earlier, it's not only for lists, it's not only for to-do lists, it's also just to kind of clear my head and to feel like, um, all right, this is a situation here. What does this look like potentially as an outcome, or what are the multiple outcomes of the situation? And then to go, how can I approach this, or how am I not thinking about this? Can I think about this differently? And I think, it's hard to do that when you're feeling very stressed and overwhelmed. So almost try and like bring yourself down to a little bit of a calm state of mind, give yourself some space, clear your area up, and kind of give yourself the time to process and go through whatever it is that's affecting you. Because a lot of people also gone through a lot of personal change, challenges, loss, that kind of thing during this time, not only career. Um, but the exciting thing is that I really do believe this, that when some doors close, other ones open, but you have to be open to seeing them, right? So that's the thing. You've got to go, okay, where can this possibly lead? And don't feel shy about hanging out to people in your network. Message the people that you've connected with in the past on LinkedIn. Speak to someone that was maybe a previous mentor or boss, or someone down the line. Maybe they can, give you some advice or connect you with someone else. So it's really about reaching out. And I know that it's hard to do that when you're feeling a bit downcast, but it gives that change of energy. And I think walk really does wonders for you. So kind of looking at that, and looking at your network and reaching out, and everyone, I think people are more open to that than you would realize. And I think we've become more open to it too over time.
Yeah. Amy, thank you so much. That is super inspiring. I couldn't agree more, and I couldn't think of a better kind of note to end our conversation off with. Thanks so much for spending the time with us today. Good luck on the rest of your career, whether you're doing entrepreneurial type things or adding value to existing organizations. I'm super excited about everything that is still ahead for you. I hope to see you on the bike a couple of times more. But thanks for spending the time with us today.
Thank you, Maynard. This has been so wonderful and always a privilege to connect with you, and best of success with the series. I think it's going to be amazing.